Welcome to the Secret Keepers podcast with your host, Kareen Zutleger. Join us as we uncover the hidden thoughts, stories, and moments that help bring light to the healing power of truth and examine how silence can affect us mentally, physically, and spiritually. We'll also share profound stories, interviews, and transformative narratives to help release ourselves from the hidden and step into healing towards inner peace, joy, and fulfillment. Now, here's your healing strategist and host, Kareen.
Welcome to the Secret Keepers podcast. And today, my guest is Michael Shoultz, and I'm going to have Michael tell you a little bit about himself.
Hey, hello, Kareen. It's so great to be here with you today. We've been connected a while, and we've had lots of conversations over the years, and I'm looking forward to this. For me, this morning's conversation. Who am I? You know, um, I'm a teacher at heart. I feel really very fortunate to have learned at a very young life. When I was 19, that was what my calling was, to be a teacher, and I've taught and am teaching and will teach in a lot of different ways. I've been a public school teacher. I've been a teacher of teachers. I've taught at the university level. Currently, when I left teaching, public school teaching, moved on from that, retired. Um, I've been doing coaching and training. I call myself a couple different things, and sometimes I refer to myself as a human potential architect. And I know we both believe that people can create their life by design. If they don't, they default to the, circumstances that they find themselves in. And so that idea of that we can create who we are and how we show up, and that potential is unlimited. And that's kind of sometimes how I talk about myself. Sometimes I talk about myself as a cultural chiropractor. Um, and helping people adjust how they think, communicate, and collaborate, to get different outcomes in their life. So it's all about whether I'm coaching or training or consulting. As you know, I have a great passion for neurodivergent individuals. That's been a part of my journey for decades, 4 or 5 decades, and that shows up for me in a lot of different ways. But yeah, just, connecting with people at an individual team level, just, creating cultures of belonging, in their personal and professional lives. So.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. I'm fascinated about, like what led you into working with neurodivergent humans. So can you
Yeah,
talk about that?
absolutely. I grew up in South Carolina. So that's where I lived the first 25 years of my life. And I went to the University of South Carolina. Um, and like most college students, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Uh, my family and my grandfather in particular wanted me to be an accountant, a businessman. I was always good with numbers, and I liked numbers and math and that kind of a thing. So I was a business major studying accounting, and I was a junior and taking an abnormal psychology course, which was I think it was required possibly, or an elective. I actually can't remember this time, but anyway, taking this abnormal psychology course, and a part of that course had us do a volunteer experience. And they gave us a list of programs and that we could reach out to and volunteer at. I think we could have picked something else as well, but given the list and everything on that list I'd never done, but there was the Columbia Program for Autistic Children was listed as a program and I'd never heard of autism. I never met anyone who was autistic, and that kind of piqued my interest, and so that's what I chose. And probably in a month's perhaps 2 months' time, I had my 20 hours in and I kept going. To me, it wasn't just the course requirement. It was something that I really had a sense of connection to and I enjoyed, and there was a comfort there. And through that process, I realized I didn't want to be an accountant. My grandfather wanted me to be an accountant, but this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to, connect with people, teach and learn, and so I changed my majors from business to psychology, and so I, ended up graduating with a degree in psychology and working at the program that I volunteered at. So I kept volunteering throughout that year and throughout the following year, just became a integral part of what I did. And I still remember, I think my grandfather was very disappointed because at the time, this was back in the 70s, and I would imagine that an accountant, would have made $30,000 or $40,000 a year, perhaps. I'm not sure what the number would have been. Um, my starting salary was, $5,600,
The teacher.
yeah. So a teacher in this program that was run, because at the time, autistic kids didn't go to public schools.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They were served, and this network of programs was run through the mental health department of mental health. So, but
Fascinating.
and since that day, like I said, I was 19, and so I felt it was pretty kind of cool actually to know that this is what I meant to do, and there's been variations, and that's gone off in different directions and have allowed me different. But that idea of just being um, a partner in purpose of, for people, whether it's individuals or teams or businesses or whatever, just being um, their partner in purpose and helping them along their growth journey and tapping into who they are and how they can show up authentically is just been a integral part of, I think, anything and everything I've done since that time. So.
That's so awesome. And so what I hear you saying is what you really do is you help each individual embrace their uniqueness. And that is so important. And you embraced yours. Instead of doing what grandpa wanted you to do, something deep inside of you was like, this isn't right for me. I have an accounting degree, and people that
Oh,
know me well know. I mean, I am really good with numbers, in math and things like that. And I love people. And so I knew that accounting wasn't, it really wasn't the journey for me, right? But that was part of my process too, figuring that out. But for somebody that doesn't know what the word neurodivergent means, can you just explain it a little bit for the audience, just in case they're not familiar?
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so autism is so there's neurodiversity in the world. And when we talk about neurodiversity, it means that our neurology is all different. People have different neurology that informs how they communicate, how they think, how they behave. And so autism is one way that neurodivergence shows up. I mean, ADHD would be a type
Right.
of a neurodivergence. I mean, it's just and so it's kind of a bit of a catchword right now that just really talks about this is that um, because at the time, the program that I went to in South Carolina was one of the few places in the country at that time that supported people with autism. And the way that we supported them was a very behavioral approach. And and although we weren't really taught this per se, but this idea that we were fixing them and we were changing who they were to meet the demands of our environment, and that idea was, I think, a prevalent way in terms of not really recognizing that this was just a continuum of being. And so I think now there's been a lot pushed about understanding that we all think differently, we all communicate differently. There's a joy and a wonderfulness of that in terms of acknowledging that. And so this neurodiversity that we all have different ways of thinking and wiring is prevalent. And when there's something that's different from the mainstream, then we talk about someone being neurodivergent. Um, and so, and autism is just one way that neurodivergence shows up for people. So,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think too that it, everybody, right? We all have a different way.
oh my
We
word.
could all be considered neurodivergent. It's an interesting way. It's just there's that, like you said, the degree of it, that it might show up, and when we can embrace authentically who we are and how we learn. I know one of the biggest moments for me was learning I'm a kinesthetic learner. I an auditory processor. So when I am talking, it's because I'm processing. I'm processing something. And when I'm learning, I need to be in it and in the experience. And as how I learned the best. So sitting and having to listen was difficult, or having to watch somebody put something up on a chalkboard was like torture for me. Um, but learning that about myself was like, you know what? There's nothing wrong with me. Or when I would sit in meditation, Michael, and I had nothing but a blank screen, and it would be like, visualize, this or that. And I'm like, I got nothing. There's got to be something wrong with me. Or my sister would be like, helping me decorate the house. And she'd be like, well, picture this. Or my husband would say the same thing, picture this. And I'm like, I got nothing. It's dark in here. And then I learned that that was normal for me,
Absolutely.
right? That was just the way my body functions. And what a gift, and as we kind of in this podcast, right, we're looking to reveal secrets and things that we maybe keep inside of us that make us feel different, um, and hold those things back from the world, and then they can wreak havoc on our bodies. I could see how many people would withhold the fact that they're neurodivergent because of the stigma, right? Even with mental health, I think, people don't reveal those sort of things because there can be a lot of judgment around it. And people, when you don't have the knowledge and the understanding, and I will use the word ignorance in air quotes, right? It just is a lack of knowledge around those things. You can start to look at people and be, as I would say, judgy McJudge judge, and,
Absolutely.
and think, well, geez. But then if you took a deep look inside yourself, there's so much more to all of us than is really revealed, I guess. And so with you in learning all about this neurodivergent stuff, and your own secrets, how does that apply to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Well, for me, I think what I've always known I was different. Um, I've known I was different since I was a young boy,
Yeah.
and um, and at the time, I mean, and so I'm, as you know, I'm a gay man, and I'm an out gay man, um, and back um, in the early '60s and '70s in the South, I mean, gay wasn't really something that I mean, I never was called a faggot, growing up, but I was called a sissy, and
Sure.
um, and
Mm.
a lot of people in my family are into sports. My dad and my brother in particular. My brother was the jock of the family. He went to school on a track scholarship. And my father had that connection in terms of an interest and passion in sports. I went to the basketball games. Not because I cared to, because I thought the guys looked, cute running up and down this, I was into that, but nobody knew that. I mean, certainly that wasn't talked about. And as I said, I grew up in the South, and there's this culture of you don't talk about things, you're tough and you don't own up to things, and so that even if there was a comfort within my family to talk about that, that would never have been talked about outside of our family, and there was, and so um, so I knew I was different. That led me to a lot of stuff, through middle school and high school, trying to fit in, getting caught up, and luckily I didn't get sucked into the whole drugs and alcohol, but I certainly experimented with that a lot, and in a way just to try to connect with the peer group. There was a level of sexual promiscuity that also that kind of showed up for me as well, throughout later adolescence and into young adulthood, kind of a thing. Just trying to fit in and find a way to that felt authentic, an authentic way, because I was a very good chameleon, but not in a good way. Because I can remember coming home from a high school thing one night. My parents were very young. I mean, my mother she had 3 kids by the time that she was 19. So she very young, and they were just doing the best that they could, right? But I remember coming and I was stoned, I'd been smoking, and she was like, wondering why my eyes were red and whatever. And she had no clue. I mean, I was a straight A student. Um, but I went out drinking, during high school. I had a car, and there was an open campus, and we went out and we drank over lunch, and because I was trying to connect with the cool kids, and I was trying to find a sense of connection because I didn't have that. And so for me, and it took quite some time and like I said, luckily I figured out that was not for me. And so by college, I'd sworn off things and had seen the light and whatever. But yeah, just that trying to connect with people and find a way to belong, have that sense of belonging with others, as all teenagers are trying to do, right?
Ah,
That's
yes.
very prevalent. But for me, that's kind of how that kind of showed up, so.
Okay. Well, thank you for so much for sharing that. That's a lot of vulnerability there, Michael, to share with the audience everything that you were going through and really looking at the human need of connection. We all have it. We're all seeking it. But during those adolescent years, our brains aren't fully developed. And so we can make those impulsive choices that could end up being fatal. And they could end up being a lifelong struggle, as for many we see, changing, the outcome of their brain structure. In my case, the drugs and the alcohol took my dad and my brother's lives. Those outcomes were different there. You and I share so many similar stories. The teen years, whoa, you know, that's a segment. That's an episode for me.
Absolutely.
That's a just a
Absolutely.
me episode. But so you have this passion then when you're looking at groups of people, because you know that everybody's brain functions a little different, and we came here created as we were created. And when we can be ostracized and maybe oppressed because of being different, right? That has physical effects on us. It has mental effects. So tell me, how did this secret affect you overall? Was it physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of the above? How did you see that show up in your life?
Yeah, definitely, emotionally and spiritually, not so much, like I said, if I had continued down that path, if I like I think it was by my freshman year in high school, when it's like it's no fun to sit and get drunk and feel horrible, and be throwing up the next day, and no, this is not fun. I'm not into that. And I tried smoking, but I didn't like it, and so I didn't continue smoking. And so I if I had continued, I think physically things would have showed up really differently for me. But I think a part of it was definitely emotionally, feeling like I could really show up and connect in an authentic way,
Sure.
and not have to hide who I was and what I thought and how I wanted to be, So, um, I have a whole, like I said, any one of these we could, talk about and go down the rabbit hole in great detail. I had a lot of um, religious trauma. I was raised Episcopalian. Before I came out, as a gay man, I was married to a woman, which I would not change that at all. Um, we got married in the Catholic Church, so I had to go to those Catholic crises, and um, but um, but yeah, there's a lot of trauma I've experienced, around hypocrisies that I've experienced around organized religion, and for the longest time, I made a cut from organized religion, because of that, and it's only been in the last, I don't know, probably 5 years, really about the time that I met you and we started having conversations, and I think my spiritual journey has evolved even more deeper, a lot because of some of the conversations that you and I have had. And I realize that I'm not a religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person. And, but there was a disconnection for that because I didn't have a way of making sense of it. And so, what I was taught is at a very young age is you cut things off, you don't talk about it, and so you close the door. And so a
Okay.
lot of doors were closed, I think, to me in terms of my emotional development, my spiritual development. And it's only been in the last, decade or so that I think I've been, I'm coming back to that, and I'm, exploring that. But
I love to hear though, like you opened your heart back up. Um, it can be difficult, right? It can be difficult to look, in the mirror even and say, I love myself as just as I am, and I know that I am who I was created to be, right? God doesn't make mistakes. You came here as who you were meant to be. And in my heart, first of all, the fact that you have dealt with the religious trauma that you have hurts my heart tremendously. Um, I have witnessed this also in our own family.
mhm,
Um, so, we also would not identify as religious people and have left organized religion. But my faith in my spirituality is deeper than it ever was. My belief in God and my trust in God is deeper, and in that knowing, and even the message of Jesus the Christ, his message of love and unconditional love. And that's what I hear from you, right? Unconditional love, to go out and about the world and help others accept fully who they are authentically. Is such a gift, because any I think any and every person that I've ever come across has some sort of question about their purpose in this world, or their role in this world. And I often find that the most questioning is done when somebody has no connection spiritually, right? To whatever terminology you want to use, earth, God, source, whatever, right? God created the earth, and is the source of all energy, and however you want to look at it. So I'm always grateful for the conversations you and I have, as far, to go into the expansion of us as human beings. But we are, and you and I have both learned that we are spiritual beings gifted with an intellect, living in a physical body. So what really is the most important piece of that is that soul inside of you, and your connection to your source, and how you choose to worship it, if you will, worship in air quotes. Um, but, thank you again, for your vulnerability and sharing, because, this is so important out there, is to have that connection to something greater, and to know that, um, when we leave this physical body, because we all will, we will leave it. The soul is going to leave and go back to somewhere. That energy is going to leave your body. Um, I've been with people, many people, as that energy has left the physical body. So I know it's true and it's real. Um, have you experienced that at all? Have you been with anybody as they've made that transition?
I haven't, but I've had I lost my mother a number of years ago, for COVID, and and so I know haven't, and I've known like my grandmother, and I've had other people who've passed, but I've not physically been present, during um, that passing. Either my
Hmm.
grandparents or my father died, on his own. He was found.
Okay.
But no, I've not had that experience, but I definitely have had connections to that. Even afterwards, I met with and dealt with a medium, actually,
Yeah.
someone that you had suggested I speak to. And so because I wanted to have a sense of closure around my mother's passing, because, um, so yeah, so I believe in, and for the longest for me, um, I've understood that at an intellectual level. And
Mhm.
I haven't questioned it intellectually, but at a integrated spiritual level. It's only really been, very recently that I feel like I've um, gone beyond an intellectual understanding of that, and really, having a sense of experiencing that at a more um, spiritual level myself. So it's I know we're talking, before we got started, this whole idea, this concept that um, whatever your purpose or whatever you're thinking about it, we're talking about a journey here. It's not a destination. Um, and I'm still very much on that journey. And that journey is evolving and continues to evolve. And I expect that it will continue to evolve. And yeah, so it's like, and I'm grateful for the journey and what I'm learning along the way. Um, because it was just interesting when you were talking about being kinesthetic and auditory. Um, um, I'm very kinesthetic too, but I'm more visual than I am. I mean, you're a lot more comfortable with words than I am, and for me, you're probably a person that probably talks to think, and I, think to talk, and this gets back to that we're all
Mhm.
different,
Yeah.
and there's nothing that's different. And at the time when I um was leaving my marriage with my dear friend and business colleague, who continues to be a dear friend and business colleague, we had a blessing to be at a weekend retreat where we were learned more about these styles, the perceptual communication styles, and it was really grateful for us to learn that, because when we were trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with our lives, not just for our kids, because we have two wonderful kids, and you know, I can't imagine not having kids, and so I'm so grateful for that experience. But we were wanting to, okay, how do we navigate these waters, not just for them, but for us, because we were great friends before we started dating and getting married, and how do we navigate it? And what we learned is that um, Nan um, talks to think. And so at the time, and she would be talking, and when I could not engage with her at a level that without this knowledge of no, she might think that I was being dismissive of her or not acknowledging her. And what we learned through this process is, okay, Nan, you talk and I'm going to listen, but I'm not going to talk back, because I need to think, and I'm going to write to you, And so we figured out this dance. I mean, she would talk, I would listen. Next day, she would get an email or a note from me where I'm now, because I need to think to communicate. And so and the fact that we were able to honor that, and not, feel mad or whatever because the
Yeah.
person's not showing up in the way that we needed and wanted them to show up, and honoring that was life-changing in terms of our own dynamic and how we work through that very, very challenging time. And it was a very challenging time. Um, but then it's something that I brought with me, throughout all these years in terms of, and so all these things, understanding the brain and the neurology, when I work with the autism, bringing that with me, understanding the dynamic that we all communicate differently and the intentionality of that, bringing that with me. The work that we've done with DISC, and I don't know how much of your audience knows about DISC as and emotional intelligence, all these tools that I picked up along the journey, bringing with to now, how do we manage this situation I'm in front of now, where I'm trying to help someone live their authentic life and create cultures of belonging, either within themselves or within the organization that they're working in and supporting. So it's just been, I'm grateful for everything I picked up along the way. So.
That's beautiful because I was going to ask you, like, what your healing process looked like. And I think you basically just described it, this journey right into um, also personal growth and really deeply understanding who you are. And once we understand who we are, it certainly makes, it's very helpful in understanding other people. In looking at, like, for me, like the whole journey of unconditional love, what does it mean really to unconditionally love someone? And what I'm hearing is that that is the type of love that you and Nan have for each other, is an unconditional love, one of complete and deep respect for who you authentically are, and that ability to embrace the differences, and instead of creating a you versus her, you created a win for both of you. And that is
Yeah.
just so beautiful, Michael.
Yeah.
It makes me very happy.
Uh, well, that understanding of that, understanding ourselves, and Donna Makova is the woman that did the initial research, and she talks about perceptual pathways, and people talk about, oh, I'm visual, I'm kinesthetic, I'm auditory. Well, the fact is, we're all of that.
Right.
We're all kinesthetic, visual, but it's how we use that information, and and how it leads to us. And so, like for me, the visualness helps me find my words, and so um, I connect kinetically, then visually becomes the bridge that allows me to tap into my auditory channel. And so, so that understanding of that perceptual framework was life-changing. And at the same time that we were learning about that, we were learning about insight meditation. Um, and the therapist that we were working with, she used meditation as a way to process through. She was a counselor, but she used insight meditation as a therapeutic tool within her counseling. And so Nan and I saw Mare, that was woman's name, Mare. We saw her individually, and then we saw her in a group. And so, so that piece, that meditation piece has also been something that I've been grateful for, because that's kind of evolved for me as well. And I know that you've been in my mind garden, and so um, I meditate, but I'm not sure I'm not a sit on the floor cross leg, lotus position. I have to move, and so I do a lot of walking meditation, and that. And my mind garden is
Yes.
a labyrinth of sorts where we do walking meditation, and used to be something that I just did myself. My partner thought I was crazy that I had this thing in our backyard, and but over time it's grown and evolved, and now I offer group walking meditations, and I offer retreats in the garden, and so there again, it's become a tool that I've embraced in terms of that whole idea of presence and mindfulness, and how do we use that to help us gain awareness and self-reflection to move forward in our life. And it's another tool that I'm really grateful to have learned at this time when my life was changing, and so dramatically, and I was stepping into really for the first time who I was authentically myself, and those tools of mindfulness and those tools of self-understanding of others and how people think and communicate were blessings that really were much needed at that time in my life. And then because of that impact, I've seen how to tap in and use those in different spheres as I've opportunities as I moved forward in my life from there. So,
Yeah, and I sense a peace about you, right? There's a peace about you with being able to authentically be yourself, not have to hide that, not feel any shame around it, brings an inner peace. And what a gift. And shouldn't we all have that? Should we all have that beautiful inner peace where, who I am is who I am. That
yes.
just that really it just really strikes me. Usually I would ask like what wisdom you've gained through this whole journey, this whole process, I mean, you really started at a young age. I mean, to be 19 and start to really listen to that inner guidance is huge. Um, but, share with the audience like that big golden nugget of wisdom through this whole journey that you've had. And what is it? What do you want them to know?
Yeah, I don't, if I were to distill it down, and I think we've referenced it earlier, but I think it's kind of a salient idea that I did that, it's a journey, um, you know, um, at a fleeting moment, we had a conversation about me coming on your podcast months
Yeah.
and months ago, and you know, it took forever for us to make that happen, kind of a thing, and and just true authenticity and transparency, and it's like, oh well, what am I going to share, because I'm still trying to figure it out, kind of a thing, and so um, and I think that's a part of we went to we left South Carolina and went to Wisconsin. When I say we, at the time, Nan and I left South Carolina and moved to Wisconsin to go to graduate school. We went to UW-Madison there. We worked on our doctorates there. I have a PhD. My mom is probably the only person that's ever called me doctor, and people position me sometimes as quote an expert, and it's something that I'm really not comfortable with. Because to me, when someone's an expert, there's an implied idea that they're going to stop learning, and that they've learned what there is to learn. And I don't feel that at all. I mean, my hesitation, fleeting, and that really wasn't the primary reason why it took us forever to get together to record this. But it is I'm on this journey, and we're all on this journey, and we are where we are at a moment of time, and the present is a beautiful thing to embrace. Um, um, and then just know that you don't have to have it all figured out. I certainly at 68 years of age, I haven't gotten it all figured out. And I hope I never do, because I want to have that sense of curiosity, to know that there's always more, and be grateful for what I have, but not satisfied that that's all there is. And so just embracing that idea, seeing life, however that's showing up for them, is a journey, and um, build your awareness, your understanding of yourself and others around you. Took me a long time. I mean, I'm one of the first people to raise my hand to help, but I haven't always been helpable, and
Oh, sure.
that idea of embracing the journey, be helpable, I think are just that
Receive.
really and be yourself, authentically yourself, is probably the big nuggets that I would kind of focus on in terms of inviting others to embrace as well. So.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Right. Especially in the receiving. Receiving is a beautiful feminine energy, right? We are made of feminine and masculine energy, all of us. And the ability to receive is an empowered feminine energy. And we certainly can live in a disempowering world if we allow it. And we've been taught, right? We are spiritual beings gifted with a intellect living in a physical body. We're here to seek fuller expression and expansion. And so that desire that you have deep in you to continually learn has been planted there because that is what you came here for. And I love that. And it's probably why we connect so well. I am a curious person as well. And I know that I will continue learning till I die because I love it. I love seeking. And thank you. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your authenticity and being here and willing to share with our audience your growth journey. And Michael, if somebody in the audience wanted to connect with you, can you please tell them how they can do that?
Absolutely. I have what's it called? Link tree. So that, Linktree, it's a site, for promoting different, social media kinds of things. And so I do have a Linktree account. It's just my name, Michael Shoultz, and it has all my social media contacts there. I have a couple websites. One is spiritrisingcoaching.com.
Okay.
So, and then if anyone's, interested in connecting around the work that I do around autistic individuals, Nan and I have a website that we operate under together, autismresourcesnetwork.com. And so at this point, I do maybe see things coming together at some point, because both the Spirit Rising coaching and the autism consulting all are under this umbrella of creating cultures of belonging and personal and professional. But at this point, there are so there's that Spirit Rising coaching website, autismresourcesnetwork.com website, and then the Linktree has all my social media accounts there. So.
Well, beautiful. And I will have all that in the show notes for everybody, all the links to those things, so that you can get in touch with Michael if that is what you wish to do. And thank you again, Michael, for being a guest on the Secret Keepers podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure as always, Corinne. I love connecting with you. Look forward to the next opportunity in person next week.
Yes. Yay. I love it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you for joining the Secret Keepers podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a like and follow so we can invite you back. And if you just want more, visit CorrineZuleger.com. Remember, you're not alone.